Big Apple Blitz with Anthony Rivardo and Matt O'Leary.
What is going on? Matt O'Leary and Anthony Rivardo join you for episode 2 of Big Apple Blitz. I am excited to get into it. Let's go to the co-host, Anthony from Fireside Giants. What's going on, my friend? How are you?
Doing great, man. Really excited for this offseason. We got, some pretty interesting mock drafts coming out, a whole lot of rumors about the Giants, what they might be doing in the draft. Then, of course, free agency is right around the corner. You've got the combine just next week. The NFL offseason is starting to heat up, and it's getting really exciting.
Absolutely. It's usually right after the Super Bowl, you got a little bit of a quiet time. But with these New York teams, there's always a storyline going on. And as you mentioned, next week, NFL draft combine. So what better place to start than a Daniel Jeremiah mock draft? It feels like when he puts out a mock draft, the NFL world kind of comes to a stop and it's like, all right, what does DJ think? And some interesting storylines come out of it for both the New York Jets and the New York Giants. So with the Giants with the 6th pick, they are obviously picking ahead of the New York Jets. Let's pull it up and then talk about it. So DJ has, will help if we scroll up, Jayden Daniels, quarterback, LSU, going to the New York Giants at pick number 6. This is an interesting one. I feel like you have people on both sides of the aisle on the Giants should take a quarterback or they shouldn't take a quarterback. What was your reaction? And let's get into it.
Yeah, my reaction to the Giants taking Jayden Daniels at 6, if anybody's been following Fireside Giants or following me on Twitter, you know that this is a pick I'm happy about. I think that the Giants need to go quarterback. I know that there are a lot of Giants fans who want to stick it out with Daniel Jones, who feel like he can turn it around, are banking on the success of the 2022 season. I'm personally not one of those fans. I think that 2 neck surgeries, torn ACL, all of the injuries over the past several years are now kind of reaching this breaking point for Daniel Jones where he hasn't proven enough to look past those injuries. I know that there is a lot of conversation about you don't give up on a guy or take his starting job away just because he got hurt. But in this case, year 6 here with the New York Giants, and now you have Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen in their going into their second offseason rather, with their backs against the wall. They have to produce in year 3, and if they don't, they could be fired. You can't put all of your faith into Daniel Jones with all of these injuries and inconsistency. He played in 6 games last year. Yes, he was sacked a lot. He was pressured a lot, but he also added a lot of those sacks and pressures himself. He doesn't have the best pocket presence. And so now when you're looking at this upcoming draft, picking inside the top 10, you don't want to be doing too often. The Giants are doing it more often than most. But even still, picking in the top 10 in a quarterback-rich class is rare. And the New York Giants haven't taken advantage of those opportunities over the past few years. Even when they had guys like Justin Herbert and Tua Tagovailoa on the board, they still had Daniel Jones and they still had faith in Daniel Jones. But now, coming off of this torn ACL, you can't have faith in him going forward. You've got a quarterback-rich class. If one of these 3 guys falls into your lap, in my opinion, it's a home run draft pick with a guy like Jayden Daniels. He's athletic. He throws a pretty deep ball. His playing style is perfect for what Brian Daboll likes to do on offense. This would be a home run pick for me.
Yeah, I'm with you on it. I think it makes a lot of sense for the Giants to go with a quarterback in this spot. As you kind of laid out, Daniel Jones going into year 6. His best season was in 2022. No one's denying that, his first year with Brian Daboll. But then, the injuries, and that feels like such a big story for Daniel Jones. He's someone who misses a lot of time in his career. He's gotten banged up, as you mentioned, a couple surgeries, and like this isn't someone that Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll drafted, and unless he comes in and blows them away, it kind of doesn't make sense for them to have that thing where they're building with Daniel Jones, and I don't think he's shown enough to where you feel comfortable with that long term. How they structured his contract, yes, it was a big money deal, but it was structured to the point where they could get out of it after 2 years, and this past year was the first year on it. feels like after this year in 2024, they're going to get out of the deal. So why not plan for the future? As you said, if things go right, hopefully you're not picking in the top 10 again. So I'm totally in on the Giants going quarterback at 6. And I guess the pushback that I think you're going to get is they'll say that the Giants aren't a quarterback away from being competitive. So now is not the time to do it. But I don't know if I agree with that logic.
Yeah, I have kind of a hot take here is that the New York Giants proved that they were just a quarterback away down the final stretch of the season, because if you take a look at those games that they lost, let's say versus the Los Angeles Rams, they lost on a failed 2-point conversion that their quarterback messed up. How about against the Buffalo Bills? Tyrod Taylor also messed up twice on the 1-yard line, so they lost that game. There's 2 more wins. Against the New York Jets, the Giants should have won that game, but they were afraid to throw the football with Tommy DeVito because he hadn't ever played football in the NFL level before. So there's 3 games that the New York Giants should have won had they won those 3 games. And again, the quarterback was the difference in those 3 games. Had they won those 3 games, they were a playoff team. That's it. The quarterback was the difference. So are the New York Giants a quarterback away from being Super Bowl contenders? Absolutely not. There are holes all over this roster, but I do think that there were enough players making plays on this team on both sides of the ball, and there was enough being done from the coaching staff throughout the season to put this team in position to win a few close games. And had they had the right quarterback in place, they would have won those games and they would have made it to the playoffs, which is crazy to say because at one point this team looked like arguably the worst in the NFL for a good stretch of the season. But they figured it out. They started to pick up some wins down the stretch. But again, I don't think Daniel Jones is the guy to make those 3 plays that the Giants needed. But you bring in a guy like a Jaden Daniels, bring up that 2-point conversion, for example. Bad pass by Tyrod Taylor to Saquon Barkley falls incomplete. Jaden Daniels just sprints his way into the end zone on a play like that. And a lot of these rookie quarterbacks have the talent to do things like that. So I'm not saying the Giants are a quarterback away from making it to the Super Bowl, but from being a competitive fringe playoff team, in my opinion, they are a quarterback away from that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know, quarterback's the most important position in the sport. So I don't even if there are other holes on the roster, none of it really matters if you don't have that quarterback right. So I'm with you there. And then another part that really we haven't got into yet is resetting the rookie contract with the quarterback is arguably the best value in all of sports. So yeah, maybe the Giants aren't ready for, to be a truly competitive team in year 1 with Jaden Daniels, but you still get another 4 years after that, being that he's a 1st-round pick, you get the 5th-year option, that he's on a relatively cheap deal. I think it makes all the sense in the world, honestly.
It does. And again, because you mentioned with that Daniel Jones contract, they structured it where they have their out this upcoming offseason. Really, the way that contract was signed, when it happened, everybody reacted to it and was like, how are you giving this quarterback 4 years, $160 million? That's not actually what the Giants did. It was really a 2-year deal with a team option for 2 more years. Like in the NBA, there's a lot of player options and team options. That's kind of what the Giants did here. They structured a 2-year deal worth $80 million, and then they had an additional 2 years attached to it. They're only going to get through 2 years of this deal. There's no chance in my eyes that Daniel Jones makes it through the rest of this contract. So they can cut him next offseason, reset that rookie quarterback window, and that will open up a lot of opportunities to do some free agency shopping next offseason. They can't do too much of it this offseason because of that Daniel Jones contract, but you get that young rookie quarterback in place this offseason. Next year, you go all in, you build around him properly, and you take advantage of that rookie quarterback contract.
Okay, here's one for you because this is a really usually big debate with these young quarterbacks. Do you sit him behind Daniel Jones at first, or does he play right away?
If Daniel Jones is healthy and ready to start by week 1, which is a big question mark. I mean, Kyler Murray tore his ACL around a similar time last year, and he wasn't ready until halfway through this past season. We've seen other quarterbacks ready by training camp, and we've seen other quarterbacks who are ready by week 4. So it's a big unknown with Daniel Jones. But if he is healthy and ready to go, I think you give him the start just because you don't want to throw your rookie quarterback in with the Wolves too early. And I say that because last year, the Giants, this past season, they really struggled in that first month of the season. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that this coaching staff wasn't fully prepared for the regular season because there wasn't much of a preseason. You had a lot of starters who looked rusty or who were getting banged up too soon. The lack of attention paid in the preseason is something I hope this coaching staff learns from. But even still, I think this is a team that's going to start slow at the beginning of the year just because of all their uncertainty and all the roster changes that are going to be happening. Saquon could be gone. We'll see about Xavier McKinney. A lot of changes coming this offseason. So I don't think I necessarily want to throw the rookie quarterback in there right away. I'd rather take time with him. If he's not ready to go week one, don't force it. That's one of the benefits of still having Daniel Jones on this roster.
No, absolutely. You could do it like exactly how the Kansas City Chiefs did. You have the veteran quarterback in there, and then you eventually move on and go to Patrick Mahomes in year 2. Or even like, I don't know, if Daniel Jones is struggling again through 8 games, there's no rule that you can't go to Jaden Daniels for the second half of their rookie season. It's correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't Eli start the first few games of Daniel Jones' rookie year?
That's exactly right. I think Eli started, I want to say, the first 6 or so games, and then Daniel Jones took over as the full-time starter. And you want to draw the comparison with Jaden Daniels here to maybe the Baltimore Ravens. A lot of people like to compare him to Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson took over as the starter, I think, 8 weeks into his regular season, took over for Joe Flacco, who I know we're going to discuss a little bit later on, which I'm excited for. But I do think that there's a lot of benefit to having a bridge quarterback in place, giving your rookie quarterback plenty of time to develop until he's ready to start.
Absolutely. I think that one makes all the sense in the world for the Giants to go this direction. And for the New York Jets, Daniel Jeremiah, for the second time, has Talisi Fuaga from Oregon State, the offensive tackle, going to the New York Jets at pick 10. In this mock, he has Olu Fashanu going 7 and Joe Alt going 5th overall to the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, for me, this is someone who in Fuaga who's had a lot of connections to the New York Jets. Supposedly, at the Senior Bowl, there's a report coming out that Joe Douglas absolutely loves this guy and that this is his target. Now, I don't think Joe Alt is making it to 10, but we've seen mocks where Olu Fashanu falls to pick 10. If both are available, I'd probably lean with going Olu Fashanu because he's more of that pure left tackle where Fuaga is going to probably have to be on the right side. And I think he's a better pass protector, which is, I think, more important in today's game. But if both those guys are off the board at pick 5 and pick 7, I don't know. I think that one's kind of obvious. And I think it'd be a home run pick if Fuaga is there and you pull the trigger on it. That should answer your right tackle problem.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think if Fashanu's there, Fashanu should be the pick because of his ability to play left tackle, which is kind of funny because from the New York Giants perspective, it would be the opposite. We would lean for the right tackle, replace Evan Neal, please. But then you got Andrew Thomas on the left side, so we don't really like the idea of drafting an Olu Fashanu and trying to move him to the right side because that's kind of what a lot of Giants fans feel went wrong with Evan Neal. He played a lot of left tackle in college, only had 1 year at right tackle. Moving him across the line, you'll run into a lot of problems doing that. So even if the Jets draft Fuaga at 10, moving him to left tackle is something that I'm sure Jets fans are going to pitch as an idea because you got to get the blind side protected for Aaron Rodgers. But really, I think you got to keep him at right tackle. That transition across the line as a rookie for an offensive lineman has proven to be very, very difficult for a lot of these guys coming in and out of the draft, and Evan Neal being a recent example of that. But going offensive tackle at number 10 is a no-brainer. You got to put some more protection up front for Aaron Rodgers. And Fuaga, I think, is an excellent selection at the number 10 overall pick.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you bring up a good point, too, with guys changing sides on the offensive line. That's very much easier said than done because you're pretty much doing everything that you normally do, like the opposite. Like all your technique, you have to flip and you're doing either on the left side or on the right side. This is kind of in a way reminiscent of when the Jets took Mekhi Becton in 2020 over Tristan Wirfs. And the big reason for that, why this kind of reminds me of it, Mekhi Becton was the left tackle, and Tristan Wirfs, there were some questions on whether he would be able to make the transition from the right side to left side. But Tampa Bay was smart with it. They played him on the right side the first few years of his career, and then eventually moved him over to the left side once he got more comfortable at the next level. And he's one of the best offensive tackles in football. So, I don't think fans should necessarily overthink it and then go, oh, well, you can't possibly take Fuaga if he's just a right tackle because you have a hole on the left side. Also, you got to just find the next best left tackle. I don't think that's the right way to go about it either, because then you could just be passing on a talented offensive lineman, which is they need at least 3 new starters on this offensive line. So, why not just continue to add to it?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you there. And again, I think that with Olu Fashanu, if he is there on the board at number 10, he'd be my pick because I think he's such an excellent pass protector. And obviously, adding more pass blocking offensive tackles to the unit is the goal here. But with Fuaga, you can't go wrong. Plug and play right tackle. He'll be your starter from day one. And I think that's exactly what you're looking for if you're the New York Jets in the first round of this draft.
Yeah, and something else that is kind of like a domino effect with this that I just want to get into quick is what they would then do with Elijah Vera Tucker, because there's some debate on whether or not he should play at guard this year or if he should play at tackle. Last year started at right guard, first 2 games of the year. Jets suffered some injuries to the offensive line, and then he moved him out to right tackle before he got hurt in Denver. And then in 2022, kind of same deal with injuries. They had him, start the year at right guard. Then he played left tackle for a game. Then he played right tackle for a few games before he got hurt to end his sophomore season. So they're kind of looking for a permanent spot for him. And I think if Fuaga is the pick, then that kind of hints towards him being AVT staying inside at guard then, and then potentially finding a different tackle in free agency to play on the left side.
Yeah, and as we discussed, that offensive tackle group in free agency, there's a couple good names up at the top, but you're going to have to pay up. And then once you get past that first tier of offensive tackles, it gets a little bit murky in that free agency water. So I think in this draft class, which is honestly brimming with offensive tackle talent in those first few rounds, it's a pretty deep class at that position group, which you can't say too often. Offensive tackles, it's not every year that there's just a bunch of good starters, like day one starters in the draft class. And this happens to be one of those years, kind of reminiscent of that 2020 NFL draft class where we saw Andrew Thomas, Tristan Wirfs, and these other guys. So this is the year, I think, for the Jets to really take advantage of a strong tackle class and target that position early.
Absolutely. So always, anytime Daniel Jeremiah drops a mock draft, feel like we got to get in on that because he's one of the most, plugged in guys. Fuaga to the Jets, and you also have going to the New York Giants, Jayden Daniels. So we'll keep an eye on that. Obviously, as the draft gets closer, there'll be more mocks and more discussion around the NFL draft. But something else we wanted to get into also is the backup quarterback market, because both of these teams are going to be in the need for a backup quarterback. And there was a story earlier this week where the New York Jets were linked to Sam Howell. Connor Hughes, who covers both the Jets and the Giants for SNY, was reporting that there's some in the Jets building that are really high on Sam Howell and would be interested in him via trade, assuming that the Washington Commanders are taking a quarterback number 2 overall. Some, I guess, interesting in a way perspectives from fans on this one. You have some who are high on Sam Howell in particular for the Jets, saying that he flashed some talent early on and then things went off the rails in the second half, but he's young, he's cheap, his cap hit's like $1 million for the next 2 years. And then the other side of the aisle is that this guy's just a turnover machine. You're gonna have to give up a draft pick for him. Obviously, covering and watching the Giants, you see a lot of Sam Howell. What was your takeaway from him this year? And what would you think of him as a backup quarterback / maybe developmental option?
As a developmental option and as a backup, I like him. It's a good thing that the Jets have an established quarterback in Aaron Rodgers, because if we were talking about potentially trading for Sam Howell as a starter, that wouldn't be an idea I'd be excited by, because Sam Howell, I still think, is one of those players that needs more time to develop. He obviously got his chance this past season with the Commanders to take over, become a franchise quarterback. He couldn't step up and do that. And you just mentioned that turnovers were a big part of that. His decision-making under pressure in particular. The Giants beat the Commanders twice this past season, and a lot of that had to do with the fact that their pressure was getting home. And once their pressure was getting home, it was a lot of prayers being thrown up by Sam Howell. And while he can have some big games and he has a strong arm, and he could throw the ball downfield when he wants to and when he needs to, he's just one of those players that you can't really trust. So from a backup quarterback standpoint, it's really up to you if you want one of those young guys with a lot of flaws and try to develop him out of those flaws and turn him into something better than what he is right now, or do you want to just take an established veteran, you know what he is, and he's not going to kill you? Because that's oftentimes the name of the game with a backup quarterback. You want to get somebody who doesn't lose you games. A lot of backup quarterbacks aren't going to win you games, but you want to make sure that your backup quarterback doesn't lose you games. And with Sam Howell, he's going to lose you games. He might win you some games too, but he's definitely going to lose you some games with his decision-making and his tendency to throw up prayers under pressure and into double coverage. So I think for the Jets, it's an interesting idea with Sam Howell. Maybe he could be that backup guy behind Aaron Rodgers, but it almost feels a little too similar to Zach Wilson. It's just a new name and a new face, but the situation just feels very similar to me.
I think you nailed it. And that's something that scares me a little bit, is these high variance backup quarterbacks. It kind of is a reason why, like, another name that gets tossed around a lot for the Jets is someone like Jameis Winston, because he has a lot of starting experience in this league. But these guys who can be turnover machines, as you said, they could lose you games. And that's not really what I want to see the Jets do. They had someone in Zach Wilson this past year who was a developmental, high variance guy going into his third year in the league. And then you're kind of just going back and hoping that Sam Howell is a little bit different. And granted, like, Howell, let's not sugarcoat it. Howell definitely showed more than Zach Wilson did during his time starting, but there's some major concerns with those interceptions and the number of sacks that he's taken. I understand Washington's line wasn't great, but, you know, similarly to Daniel Jones or Zach Wilson, Sam Howell's a quarterback who sometimes leads into his own sacks and, you know, creates more issues there. And, you know, in the game that he played against the Jets, he got benched and he was horrible. He had a 27% completion percentage, 56 yards on 22 passing attempts, no touchdowns, 2 picks. Granted, it's, you know, going up against a really good defense, but I don't know. I'd feel significantly more comfortable with someone else on that roster, Jacoby Brissett, who, granted, does not have nearly as high of a ceiling, maybe, but his floor is so significantly higher. And I'd rather go that route, the higher floor backup quarterback who you know what you're going to get, even if he's going to cost you a little bit more.
He's going to cost you a little bit more, but again, he's not going to cost you draft capital necessarily. And with Jacoby Brissett, he's not going to lose you games. I that's what I'm going to keep coming back to. I just think with Sam Howell, 21 interceptions this past season, that's a staggering number. And when you look at the way that he plays versus the way that a Jacoby Brissett plays, we've seen Jacoby Brissett go in there for teams in the past and have really solid performances and even lead teams to victories and never really put the team in harm's way with a bounty of interceptions like Sam Howell will. So I think Jacoby Brissett makes a lot of sense. I think that there's other guys in the free agency market who also make sense. If you want to take a look at a Gardner Minshew, I'm not sure if he's interested in leaving Indianapolis. I think he does have a good thing going as Anthony Richardson's backup, especially considering Richardson coming off of the season-ending injury. We'll see what time he's ready to return to practice and to game shape. But if Gardner Minshew is available in free agency, that's a player that I think both the Jets and the Giants can look at as a guy who, you know, can start you an extended period of time and can do it at a high level, not top 10 quarterback level, but in terms of backups, I don't think there's anyone better than Gardner Minshew. And for the Jets, who I think were really a quarterback away from competing at a high level this past season, you might just want to pay up for that backup quarterback, get that added stability, and get you a guy that you know can give you high quality football across an entire season.
No, absolutely. And that's something that I think a lot of Jeff fans would like to see. Like, day one of free agency, not mess around, sign one of these higher end backup quarterbacks. It's an interesting idea, trading for Howell. There's a lot of risk involved, but he's not very costly. He has shown some upside. Maybe if the Jets had a better offensive staff, I'd feel a little bit differently. Like, I just don't know how much faith I'm going to put in Nathaniel Hackett to, you know, get the most out of Sam Howell. Yes, sitting behind Aaron Rodgers for a year or two might do him some good, but I don't know. I don't know if they have the staff for this. I think, like you mentioned, Gardner Minshew, Jacoby Brissett, Ryan Tannehill's a name that I think is going to get linked to the Jets too, because of their abundance of former Tennessee Titans coaches on this roster. Todd Downing, Keith Carter. They brought in Tony Deuce, who's a running back coach. There's just a lot of familiarity there with Tannehill and this staff. So someone of that caliber, I would think, would be the play here for the Jets.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. And it's funny you bring up Titans coaching staff connections, because that was a pretty heavy topic of discussion with the Giants in last episode on the defensive side of the ball. But coaching staff connections are always something that I think are important to take note of. They really do dictate the way that a team goes in free agency, because at the end of the day, the NFL is a relationship business, and those strong relationships often create an attraction in free agency to reunite and continue working together. And so I think that's something to definitely keep in mind as we enter free agency.
Now, what about from the Giants' perspective? Because that's a team that's probably going to be, in the market for a backup quarterback. But is that a paying one of these guys, a higher end backup, or maybe finding some value somewhere?
Yeah, I have a funny one that I like for the New York Giants that I think Jets fans will be intrigued by, and it's Sam Darnold as a free
Oh,
agent potential backup quarterback. And with Darnold, obviously things didn't go the way that anybody would have liked for them to when he was with the New York Jets, but now I feel like spending a year underneath Kyle Shanahan, developing, he beat out Trey Lance as that backup quarterback behind Brock Purdy. When he got a couple opportunities, he got about 60 snaps with the 49ers this season. He looked pretty good. He looked like he's definitely developed. He looked more comfortable in the Shanahan offense, which, of course, everyone looks better in the Shanahan offense. But still, Darnold, I always felt like flashed potential but couldn't put it all together with the New York Jets. And now that he's kind of gotten this time to step back and play as a backup with the Panthers, with the 49ers, and kind of just continue to develop and hone in on his craft as a backup quarterback who can maybe be competitive with Daniel Jones. That's what I like from Sam Darnold. I think that Sam Darnold signing him in free agency doesn't say, okay, we're bringing in a backup for Daniel Jones and that's that. It says we're bringing in a backup with some upside where if Daniel Jones struggles or we pull him from the starting lineup, and this is assuming that they don't draft a quarterback, that we can see what we have in Sam Darnold still, because I don't know if his story is completely written and finished yet. So I think that he's one of those high upside backup quarterbacks that would interest me if I were the Giants.
No, that is totally fair with Darnold, and that's one that Jet fans will bring up as well. Why not just bring back Sam Darnold? And I think it's totally different for the Jets and the Giants. Like, Joe Douglas traded away Sam, and there was kind of like just admitting that it wasn't going to work out here. So I don't really see a world where they could salvage that relationship and then bring him back. But Sam is a backup option who could maybe push for starting, time makes sense for the Giants, who, as you said, are in a different spot. Daniel Jones is probably in the last year of his deal. It kind of lights a fire under Daniel Jones, I would think, like looking over his shoulder and saying, like, this is someone who could come in and, take my job. I don't think it's crazy to think that Sam could play on a similar level to Daniel Jones, given the opportunity. And, he's someone who turnovers are a little bit of an issue with him, but under the proper coaching, like you deal with Shanahan, then coming over and dealing with Brian Daboll, that's the best coaches offensively that he's had in his career. So, it's not out of the realm of possibility that he could improve.
I think he still could improve, and that's why I'm interested in it. And I also feel like signing Sam Darnold in free agency, it would be a cheap deal, be a short-term deal, and it wouldn't prevent you from drafting a quarterback as well. You could realistically head into the 2024 season with Daniel Jones on the roster, Sam Darnold also on the roster, and a rookie quarterback on the roster. And I think there's a lot of benefits to having a guy like Sam Darnold, who is your emergency quarterback. If, let's say, Daniel Jones, you're not rolling with him, you're rolling with the rookie, and you have an injury to the rookie, you don't have to just go right back to Daniel Jones when you want to cut him in the offseason. Now you can see what you have in Sam Darnold as a potential backup quarterback that you want to continue to develop. And one thing with Brian Daboll that we saw over these past couple of seasons with Daniel Jones and then with Tyrod Taylor and Tommy DeVito, in this new offense, I don't want to bring up his Buffalo Bills offense, because with Josh Allen, obviously there were a ton of turnovers. But in this new offense with the Giants, the quarterbacks have not been turning the ball over. Daniel Jones had the lowest interception rate in the NFL in 2022 at like 1.1% or something. And then Tyrod Taylor, again, stood in there this past season and rarely threw an interception. I can't even remember if he did. And Tommy DeVito only had a couple. But once he started to get into a groove as a starter, the turnovers disappeared. So Brian Daboll's done a really good job at creating a pretty conservative offense at times, which of course, comes at the expense of creating explosive plays, but also has been helping the Giants quarterbacks keep the turnovers down. And so with Sam Darnold, I feel like he's got the tools, he's got the talent, he's got the arm strength to make things happen in a Brian Daboll offense, but he also would benefit from the fact that Daboll's been keeping those turnovers down. So that issue wouldn't be a great concern for me with Darnold if he were to sign with the New York Giants. I wouldn't be so much scared of the turnover problem as I would be excited by the potential upside of the signing.
Yeah, and the funny thing too with Darnold is, it feels like he's been in the league forever. He's still 26 years old. He doesn't turn 27 until June. So he's had the experience. He's just a younger guy coming into the league at, 21 years old, going into his now 7th year in the league, and it's gonna be his age 27 season. So maybe there is something left in the tank for Sam Darnold. I like that fit for the Giants a lot. On the Jets side, I've had that one brought up to me a few times. I don't see it. I don't think they're going to, do that. Similar to another one when talking about Sam Howell, another quarterback who's on the trade market, Justin Fields, sometimes gets brought up and say, oh, why can't the Jets trade for Justin Fields? Well, because they passed on him in the 2021 draft. So I don't see Joe Douglas turning around and saying, the guy we could have taken second overall, now we're going to give up a draft asset for and admit that, Zach Wilson taking him second was a mistake. So don't necessarily see either of those options working out, but Sam to the Giants, I could totally see that.
Yeah, and on Justin Fields to me, I don't know how you view him. I view him as a starting quarterback. I think that he's been in a tough situation with the Chicago Bears. Yes, he's had DJ Moore, but I thought the offensive coordinator, Luke Getsy, was just terrible in the way that he was running that offense. He wanted to use too much of the ground game, wouldn't let Justin Fields rip it, and then at times was making him a robot. He needs a change of scenery with a team that's going to fully buy into him as a starter, which is going to be tough now at this stage in his career with a contract negotiation coming up. But for the New York Jets, Fields doesn't make any sense. For the Giants, though, if they end up not drafting a quarterback and they're there on draft day and it's the second round and they don't like the quarterbacks on the board, then I could see them maybe looking at Justin Fields as a potential option. But even then, I think the chances of that happening are slim to none.
Yeah, it feels like, I don't know, to me, Atlanta or Pittsburgh would be teams that I think should take a chance on Fields because their starting quarterbacks aren't ideal. Unless, the Atlanta's in a spot at pick 8, maybe they like a quarterback and they go that direction. But I agree. I think he has a chance to start somewhere else.
Yep, me too.
Look, let's close with this. We talked about free agents last week, and a name that wasn't brought up, but has a connection to both the Jets and potentially the Giants. Bryce Huff linked to the New York Giants. What's your take on that?
I think it's interesting. I'm not sure how I feel about it. I'm not completely sold on Bryce Huff. I don't know how Jets fans feel if they are completely sold. I think when you look at his year-to-year production, this feels to me like a player in a contract year having a big season and getting big money without proving that he can sustain those big seasons long-term. So if I'm the New York Giants, I read an article yesterday that said from ESPN that that the Giants were the best fit for Bryce Huff in free agency. And I'm not sure that I see that because I feel like this Giants team needs a lot of proven talent. And to me, Bryce Huff still is unproven talent. And again, Jets fans might feel differently, but I don't know if he's shown enough year-to-year production for me to buy in and give him this 4-year, $36 million contract that SpotRack is projecting. That feels really rich in my mind for a Bryce Huff. But if he's there on a 1-year deal, similar to when Hassan Reddick was available in free agency a few years ago, signed a 1-year deal with the Arizona Cardinals, and then continued his breakout and now has big money and big seasons with the Philadelphia Eagles. If you think Bryce Huff is going to be Hassan Reddick, okay, then it makes sense. But if you don't know for sure that he's going to be that, he's kind of one of those risky free agent signings that I would probably stay away from.
That's totally fair. And a lot of people will bring up the number of snaps that he plays. But my pushback or rebuttal for that would be that every time the Jets have increased his snaps, he has grown in that. It's not like he was exposed when playing more snaps. He went up from like 20-something% in 2022. And then this past year was 40%. And he had a double-digit sack season in 40, just playing 40% of the snaps. When you look at like some of the efficiency numbers, like, per rush, he always ranks towards the top of the league. I think someone's going to pay him $15+ million a year. and give him that opportunity. Maybe it's not the Giants, but a team with a lot of cap space, I think, has that luxury of taking that chance. I hope the Jets keep him. I'm not sold that they do. I think he hits the open market and gets paid probably, again, $15 to $18 million. And, I think he has that upside where he could be a consistent double-digit sack guy, and a lot of times these edge rushers, in their mid-20s, that's when they really have that breakout and they really hit their stride. Bryce Huff, is 25 years old, developed, has gotten better year over year. I think someone's going to pay him, and I think he's going to produce with a bigger role. I think he's that good as a pass rusher, but there is that level of unknown, right? It is a risk. You are taking that risk or gamble that he's going to succeed with the bigger playing time, but I think he's a guy that can do it.
I mean, I do too, and it's not a signing that I'm against. If the Giants made the signing, I'd probably be pretty excited about it because of the potential. I just think there's a lot of risk involved with it because half of edge rusher production can be attributed sometimes to the system that they play in. And I think the Jets have a great system. I like their defensive scheme. Like Robert Saleh is a great defensive mind. They have a really good thing going over there. And that could be part of the reason why Bryce Huff was able to find success in the limited playing time. Now, if he gets an expanded role moving over to this New York Giants defense, with Shane Bowen as the new defensive coordinator who runs this multiple front, and we don't really know what that's going to look like just yet. Don't know how that's going to take shape. I think there's a lot of uncertainty there. So the Giants might end up signing a player in free agency that they think is really talented, but now they're going to bring in this new player that they have zero familiarity with and throw them into a brand new defensive scheme. And the expectations are going to be high, and that scheme might start off slow because it is new. So I just don't know if it's a good fit. The Giants need to add another edge rusher. I mean, they've got Kayvon Thibodeau, who I think is very inconsistent. And then opposite him, they have Azeez Ojulari, who I think is very good, but never healthy. And so they got to find someone else that can start you 17 games. But again, moving into this new defense, you're going to want to get somebody with a lot more of a proven background. And Bryce Huff feels like a high risk, high reward type signing.
Absolutely. It's, if you're looking for not necessarily the consistency, but more of like the known, then I would say that Huff is probably not your guy. If you want to get someone who is, 25 years old, hasn't really hit his peak yet, but you're willing to take that chance that he will with your squad, then that's kind of the direction that you go. Ojulari is an interesting one on the Giants side. Like, I feel like if you stay healthy, man, and just put together a full season, he could be the guy on the opposite side of Kayvon, but the last 2 years has just been rough for him.
It has been, and the worst part about it is when he's been on the field over the past 2 years, he's been great. Like, if you take a look at that 2022 season, he played in only 7 games with 5 starts, and he had 5.5 sacks, 3 tackles for loss, and 3 forced fumbles. He was dominant in those 5 games that he started, but he only started 5 games because he was so injured. And then this past season, we were like, okay, well, he's not injury prone yet. It's really only been 1 season of injuries, but then he got injured again. And so now he's an injury prone player. That's what we label him. And now we're very confused on what his future looks like for the New York Giants. I think you could consider him a potential trade block piece. He's a guy that maybe if you're trying to move up in the draft, if the Giants are thinking about getting up to the number 3 or number 1 overall pick, I think Ojulari's name could come up in those conversations. He's not somebody that you feel super confident in going forward, so he can kind of be available in that way. And while at one point we looked at him as a potential every down pass rusher, now it's kind of like a rotational pass rusher idea, and we're looking to get somebody in front of him so that Azeez Ojulari can just go out there in spurts, not get injured, and kind of just be a rotational guy, which is disappointing, but we'll have to see if he's able to stay healthy this season. If he is, I'm still banking on Azeez Ojulari's talents. I think that he's great, but because of all the injury risk there, you got to bring in another guy to compete with him.
Absolutely. I would think that edge is a position that the New York Giants would be taking a look at in either free agency or the draft. So Bryce Huff being one of the names hitting the market is an interesting one. Yesterday came out from Zach Rosenblatt. The Jets are not expected to use the franchise tag on Bryce Huff, which really isn't all that surprising. That seemed like that was a kind of wishful thinking. So my guess, I think he hits the open market and signs somewhere else. I don't know if it's with the Giants, but I could see a team that really has a young team that has a lot of cap space and has money to spend being that team that takes the shot on Bryce Huff. Any closing thoughts before we get out of here, Anthony?
I think free agency is going to be interesting. I'm really excited for this upcoming scouting combine because once that kicks off, then we're going to hear a lot more rumors start to get spread. I know that the Giants haven't met with Saquon Barkley's representatives just yet. They're going to at the scouting combine, though. I think the story is the same for Xavier McKinney, who I've seen, sent all over the place and different rumors. Everybody seems to want to sign Xavier McKinney except for Giants fans, which is the most mind-boggling storyline of the offseason for me so far. I think Xavier McKinney is an absolute star, and they need to extend him. I don't know where Jets fans are on Xavier McKinney. I don't know if they've kind of shown any interest in him if he does hit the open market, but we're going to get a lot more information on what this offseason is going to look like for both of these teams at the scouting combine. If the Giants are interviewing with those top quarterbacks, we know that they're thinking of drafting them. If they don't interview with them, then okay, maybe it's not going to happen for us this offseason. But the combine is really where everything starts to take shape for these NFL teams right ahead of free agency. So it's definitely an exciting time coming up.
Absolutely. So we'll have you covered for the combine next week with all kinds of different storylines at the pro level and for draft prospects. So that's going to do it for us on this episode. Be sure to follow along on the channel. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. Check out Anthony's work on his channel and on Fireside Giants. You can find me at Matt O'Leary NY. That'll do it for us. I'm Matt. He's Anthony. And we'll catch you next time.